The cold February wind blew through the streets of Boston when Ray Ellison first met Sophia Meyer. It was 3 years ago at the opening of an exhibition at Ellison Art, a prestigious art gallery owned by his mother, Mary. Sophia had just moved from Chicago after receiving an offer to become an assistant curator at the gallery. From the very beginning, there was a special chemistry between them. He, a financial analyst with a mathematical mind. She, a passionate art lover with impeccable taste. I remember her standing in front of a Rothko painting, completely absorbed in contemplation, Ray recalled in an interview. When I approached and asked what she saw in those colored rectangles, she turned and said, "The entire spectrum of human emotions." At that moment, I knew she was special. 6 months later, they moved in together, and 2 years later, Ray proposed. To their close friends and colleagues, they seemed like the perfect couple, a successful analyst at the investment firm Blue Harbor Finance and a talented art historian building a career in the world of contemporary art. The contrast between their personalities seemed to complement each other perfectly. His restraint and pragmatism matched her emotionality and creativity. Mary Ellison, the widow of an influential businessman and herself a prominent figure in Boston's art circles, outwardly approved of her son's choice. She founded the Allison Art Gallery 15 years ago, turning it into one of the most iconic venues for contemporary art on the East Coast. At 56, Mary retained her elegance and sharp mind. After her husband's death, she devoted herself entirely to her son and her business. Mary was always a demanding mother, said the sister of the Ellisons' late husband. After Robert's death, she became even more protective of Ray. Sometimes it bordered on overprotectiveness. Despite her busy work schedule, Mary personally oversaw all significant exhibitions and often worked side by side with Sophia. According to gallery staff, the relationship between them was professional, but with a hint of rivalry. Mary recognized Sophia's talent, but rarely allowed her to work on independent projects. Ray was the center of Mary's universe, noted one of the gallery's regular customers. Any woman close to him had to pass an unspoken test. With the wedding scheduled for April 25th approaching, preparations entered an active phase. Ray entrusted the organization entirely to Sophia and her close friend Olivia Chen, a professional wedding planner with an impeccable reputation. The wedding reception was planned at the historic Longwood Mansion and the ceremony at Trinity Church, where Ray's parents were married. Sophia wanted everything to be perfect, Olivia recalled. She chose every detail, from the floral arrangements to the music. She was especially careful about the guest list. Sometimes I thought she was more nervous than usual. 3 weeks before the celebration, Olivia noticed the first signs of tension. At the wedding dress fitting, Sophia seemed distracted and irritable. When Mary suggested using the Ellison family veil, a subdued but emotional discussion ensued between the women. It was a small thing, but the reaction seemed disproportionate, Olivia told investigators. Sophia insisted on a modern look, without traditional elements. Mary talked about family values and continuity. There was something personal about their argument. Theodore Frost, Ray's best friend since college, was supposed to be the best man at the wedding. An IT security specialist with an analytical mind, he had always been observant. It was Theodore who first noticed that Mary's behavior changed in Sophia's presence. Ray was too busy at work to notice such details, Theodore explained. In the last few months before the wedding, he practically lived in the office, working on a big deal. And I saw how the atmosphere changed when Mary and Sophia were in the same room. You could literally feel the tension. At the bachelor party 2 weeks before the wedding, Theodore tried to hint to his friend about his mother's strange behavior. "Ray, haven't you noticed anything strange between Mary and Sophia lately?" he asked after a few glasses of whiskey. Ray just waved it off. "They're both perfectionists and want to control the process. Naturally, there's friction. Everything will be fine after the wedding." Theodore wasn't so sure. As a computer security professional, he was used to noticing anomalies in people's behavior as well as in systems. Something didn't add up in this picture, he recalled. I could feel it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. 10 days before the wedding, Olivia Chen organized a final meeting with all the key players at the Atlantic restaurant. Ray and Sophia, Mary, Theodore, and Olivia herself were present at the meeting. The meeting was planned as a formal approval of all the details. There was a strange tension in the restaurant, Olivia said. Sophia kept checking her phone. Mary was overly focused on details like the table layout and guest seating. Ray seemed to be the only one who was truly relaxed and happy. When Mary left for the ladies' room, Theodore noticed Sophia quickly grab her phone and send a message. I accidentally saw part of the text, he admitted later. It said something like, "She's starting to suspect. We need to act fast." At the time, I thought it was about some kind of wedding surprise. At the end of the meeting, Mary suggested holding a traditional pre-wedding dinner the day before the ceremony at their family mansion. "It's an Ellison tradition," she said with a smile that brooked no argument. The last dinner before the start of a new chapter in the family's life. Sophia reluctantly agreed, although Olivia noticed how her fingers clenched around her wine glass. None of those present at the time suspected that this pre-wedding dinner would be a prelude to a tragedy that would shake not only their lives, but the entire city of Boston. A week before the pre-wedding dinner, the atmosphere at the Allison Art Gallery became even more tense. Employees noted that Mary and Sophia, who had previously worked together professionally, were now trying to avoid working together. Linda Parker, the gallery's administrator with 10 years of experience, noticed that communication between them took place mainly through emails or intermediaries, even when they were in the same building. There was a particularly unpleasant incident that Tuesday, recalled. Sophia was overseeing the preparation of an exhibition by a young sculptor from Providence. Mary suddenly intervened and completely changed the concept without prior discussion. When Sophia tried to object, Mary coldly said, "I am still the owner of this gallery, and the mother of your future husband. Don't forget that." After that, Sophia locked herself in her office for an hour. When she came out, her eyes were red, but her expression remained determined. That same day, she stayed late at the gallery, even though she usually left on time to spend the evening with Ray. Mary Allison also showed signs of unusual behavior. Jeffrey Lawrence, a longtime client and friend of the Allison family, noticed this during his visit to the gallery. "I had known Mary for over 15 years, since the gallery opened," he said. "She had always been a consummate professional, reserved, attentive, with impeccable taste. But that day she seemed distracted. She interrupted our conversation twice to check her phone. When I asked about Ray's upcoming wedding, she reacted strangely. She paused for a few seconds, then replied, 'The wedding? Yes, of course. Everything is going according to plan.' Her voice sounded as if she were talking about a business meeting rather than a happy event." Concerned by Mary's strange behavior, Jeffrey tried to find out more. I asked if everything was okay. Mary suddenly looked at me very directly and said, "Sometimes we think we know people, but it turns out we don't know them at all." Then she quickly changed the subject to the new exhibits. This was strange even for Mary, who always knew how to keep her emotions under control. That same day, Mary unexpectedly canceled a meeting with a potential investor that she had been planning for several months. Her assistant was surprised, as Mary had never before canceled important business meetings without a valid reason. Meanwhile, Ray Allison was completely absorbed in a major project at Blue Harbor Finance. His team was working on analyzing a possible merger between two technology companies, a deal that could bring the firm millions in commissions. Colleagues noted that Ray spent 16 hours a day at the office. "He literally lived at work," recalled Mark Jenkins, Ray's colleague. "He was the first to arrive and the last to leave. I often saw him eating dinner at his desk while analyzing reports. When someone mentioned his upcoming wedding, he would smile and say something like, 'Sophia is taking care of the preparations. I have the best bride in the world.' But it was obvious that his thoughts remained in his spreadsheets and charts. Ray missed several meetings with wedding contractors, entrusting all decisions to Sophia. Even the wedding suit fitting had to be rescheduled twice because of his busy schedule. He lived in his own world of numbers and forecasts, commented Olivia Chen. Sophia didn't complain, but I could see her disappointment. Once she said, "Sometimes I feel like he's marrying his job, not me." It was during this period that Theodore Frost, concerned about Mary's strange behavior and the tense relationship between her and Sophia, decided to take a closer look at the situation. Using his IT skills and natural powers of observation, he began to notice suspicious details in Sophia's behavior. One evening, Ray and I were planning to have dinner, Theodore recounted. He was running late at work as usual, so I offered to pick up Sophia from the gallery. When I arrived, the secretary said she had left an hour ago. I called her, and she said she was already home, getting ready for dinner. I didn't think much of it, but when I stopped by their apartment to pick up Ray, I noticed that Sophia had just returned. Her coat was wet from the rain that had just started, and she looked agitated. Theodore, not wanting to cause problems on the eve of his friend's wedding, didn't ask Sophia where she had actually been, but his suspicions grew when, a few days later, he happened to run into her at a cafe in Back Bay, far from the gallery and his and Ray's apartment. Sophia was sitting at a table with a young man Theodore had never seen before. Their conversation seemed emotional and intense. When I walked in, she didn't notice me, Theodore continued. I decided not to approach them, but watched them from the queue. The man seemed agitated and raised his voice several times, although I couldn't make out the words. At one point, he handed her an envelope, which she quickly put in her bag. Then they parted ways, with Sophia clearly trying to make sure no one was following her. Theodore found himself in a difficult situation. On the one hand, he was Ray's best friend and felt responsible for his well-being. On the other hand, he had no concrete evidence of any inappropriate behavior on Sophia's part, only suspicions. I decided to talk to Ray, Theodore admitted. But every time I tried to bring up his relationship with Sophia or Mary's strange behavior, he dismissed it. Now is not the time, my friend. Let's do it after the deal. He was really completely immersed in his work. 3 days before the pre-wedding dinner, the tension reached its peak. Sophia spent the whole day at the gallery, finishing a project that was to be her last major work before a week's vacation for the wedding. Mary unexpectedly showed up at the gallery, even though she had meetings scheduled in another part of town that day. They locked themselves in Mary's office, Linda Parker said. Through the wall, you could hear that the conversation was tense. Voices were raised. At one point, Sophia shouted something like, "You have no right," and Mary replied, "I have a right to know the truth." When Sophia came out, she was pale but kept her composure. She quickly gathered her things and left, saying she wasn't feeling well. That evening, Sophia did not answer Ray's calls, later explaining that she had a severe migraine. Mary was also unavailable, which was unusual for her. Preparations for the pre-wedding dinner were in full swing. The Ellisons' mansion, located in the prestigious Beacon Hill neighborhood, was ready to welcome guests. Mary personally oversaw the arrangements, controlling every detail from the floral arrangements to the wine list. The guest list was limited to the closest circle: Ray and Sophia, Sophia's parents, flying in from Chicago, Theodore as best man, Olivia, and a few close family friends. Mary was incredibly meticulous in preparing for this dinner, noted the Ellisons' housekeeper, who had worked for the family for over 10 years. She personally checked the table settings and changed the menu twice. At one point, I heard her say on the phone, "Everything has to be perfect. This is going to be a very special evening." There was something in her voice that I can't quite describe, but it made me feel uncomfortable. The day before the pre-wedding dinner, Ray finally completed his project. The team successfully presented the analysis to management, and the deal was approved. For the first time in weeks, he returned home before 8 p.m., planning to spend time with Sophia. But the apartment was empty. Sophia sent a message saying she was delayed at her final wedding dress fitting with Olivia. When she came back, she looked exhausted, Ray later recounted. I suggested opening a bottle of wine to celebrate the completion of my project and the beginning of our new life. She agreed, but seemed distracted. When I asked if everything was okay, she hugged me and said, "I'm just nervous about the wedding. And then there's dinner tomorrow. Your mom always knows how to create tension." I laughed and said she was exaggerating. If only I had known what would happen the next day. That night, according to Ray, Sophia couldn't sleep for a long time. She got up several times to check her phone. When Ray woke up around 3 in the morning, he saw her sitting in the living room with a glass of water, staring out the window. She said she was just nervous about the wedding. I believed her. How naive I was. At the same time, in the mansion on Beacon Hill, Mary Allison was also awake. The housekeeper who arrived in the morning noticed that the bed had not been made and that the light in the study had been on all night. No one could have guessed that this pre-wedding dinner would not be the beginning of the celebrations, but a prelude to a tragedy that would forever change the lives of everyone involved. The evening of April 24th was unusually warm for Boston. The Ellisons' historic mansion on Beacon Hill was impeccably prepared for the pre-wedding dinner. Crystal chandeliers softly illuminated the spacious dining room, where a table for 12 had been set. White orchids and silver candelabra created an elegant atmosphere. The butler greeted guests at the entrance, and professional waiters in white gloves prepared to serve exquisite dishes. The first to arrive were Sophie's parents, David and Elizabeth Meyer, a respectable couple from Chicago. David, a university professor of economics, and Elizabeth, editor-in-chief of a literary magazine, looked a little out of place in the luxurious mansion. "We've always lived modestly," Elizabeth admitted later. Sophie grew up in an academic environment where knowledge was valued over material possessions. When we saw the Ellisons' mansion, I couldn't help but think that our daughter was entering a completely different world. Next to arrive were Theodore Frost and his companion, Vanessa Green, an art historian from the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. They were followed by Olivia Chen and several other close friends of the family. Ray and Sophia were the last to arrive. They appeared together, but attentive observers noticed the tension between them. Sophia was dressed in an elegant dark blue gown, but she looked pale and tired. Ray, on the other hand, radiated energy and enthusiasm, finally freed from his work project and fully focused on the upcoming wedding. When they entered, Mary greeted them in the hall, said the butler. She hugged her son long and hard, as if she hadn't seen him in months, even though they had met a few days ago. With Sophia, she exchanged only a formal nod. It was noticeable to everyone. The tension between Mary and Sophia was evident throughout the evening. They studiously avoided direct communication, interacting through other guests. When Sophia was asked about the details of the upcoming wedding, she responded briefly, without her usual enthusiasm. Mary, always renowned for her hosting skills, was unusually quiet and often appeared lost in thought. During the aperitifs in the living room, Theodore recalled, I watched Mary and Sophia carefully maneuver around the room, never coming close to each other. If Sophia moved to one group of guests, Mary would discreetly move to another. It was like a strange dance of avoidance. When the guests moved to the dining room, the seating arrangement also reflected this tension. Mary took her place at the head of the table, with Ray on her right and Sophia's father on her left. Sophia sat at the opposite end, between Theodore and Olivia, as far away from her mother-in-law as possible. The conversation at dinner was tense, with long pauses that the guests tried to fill with small talk. David Meyer tried to discuss current economic trends with Ray, while Elizabeth asked Mary about the art collection in the mansion. Theodore watched everyone closely, noticing details that might escape others. At one point, he recounted, Mary raised her glass and proposed a toast to the happiness of the newlyweds. Everyone joined in, but I noticed that Sophia barely sipped her champagne, her hand trembling slightly. When her eyes met Mary's across the table for a second, I felt an almost physical tension. It wasn't just a conflict between future mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. It was something deeper and more disturbing. During the main course, filet mignon with truffle puree, Ray tried to lighten the mood by talking about his plans for their honeymoon in Italy. He described the villa he had rented on the Amalfi Coast and the wine tastings he had booked in Tuscany. Sophia smiled faintly, but it was clear that her thoughts were far away. "I can't wait for all this preparation to be over and for us to finally be alone together," Ray said, taking Sophia's hand. "The last few months have been too stressful for all of us." "Yes," Sophia replied quietly. "I want it to be over too." Mary, hearing these words, looked intently at Sophia. "It will all be over soon, dear. Everything comes to an end," she said with an ambiguous smile, causing several guests to exchange nervous glances. After dessert, an exquisite chocolate souffle, Mary invited the guests to move to the library for coffee and liqueurs. As the guests moved, she gently took Ray by the elbow. "Son, I need to talk to you," she said loudly enough for Theodore, who was standing nearby, to hear. "In private, please. It's important." Ray looked surprised. "Right now, Mom? We have guests." "After everyone leaves," Mary insisted. "It can't wait. Please stay a little longer." Ray nodded reluctantly, casting an apologetic glance at Sophia, who was watching the exchange with an unreadable expression on her face. In the library, the guests settled into leather armchairs, sipping coffee and brandy. Sophia sat next to her parents, maintaining a quiet conversation. She checked her phone several times, which did not escape Theodore's attention. At one point, Sophia excused herself and left, explaining that she needed to use the ladies' room. She was gone for about 15 minutes, which Theodore found suspicious. Going out into the hallway on the pretext of making a work call, he saw Sophia not heading toward the bathroom, but at the far end of the hallway, near a closed door, presumably leading to Mary's office. She looked back to see if anyone was nearby, Theodore recalled. Not noticing me in the shadows, she quickly opened the door with her key. She had a key to Mary's office, and slipped inside. 5 to 7 minutes later, she came out holding something small in her hand, which she quickly hid in her purse. Her face showed a mixture of anxiety and determination. Theodore returned to the library before Sophia and watched her return. She looked calmer, though still tense. Approaching Ray, she whispered something in his ear. He frowned, but then nodded. Shortly after, Sophia announced that she was feeling unwell and would like to leave. Ray seemed torn between caring for his fiancée and his mother's request to stay and talk. "I'll take you home," he said to Sophia. "Then I'll come back to talk to Mom." "Don't worry," Theodore interjected. "I can take Sophia. Vanessa and I have to leave anyway. You stay and talk to Mary, since it's so important." After a brief discussion, Ray agreed to this plan. Sophia didn't look particularly happy, but she didn't object. She said goodbye to her parents, who were staying at a nearby hotel, and to Mary with a cool, formal kiss on the cheek. "See you tomorrow, Mary. Thanks for having us," she said, without a hint of a smile. "See you tomorrow, Sophia. Take care," Mary replied with an impassive expression. As Theodore, Vanessa, and Sophia left, Theodore noticed that Ray and Mary exchanged glances full of unspoken tension. Mary nodded slightly to her son, as if confirming the importance of their upcoming conversation. In the car, Sophia sat in the back seat, lost in her thoughts. Vanessa tried to keep the conversation going by asking about the honeymoon and wedding plans, but received only one-word answers. "When we pulled up to her apartment," Theodore recounted, "I offered to walk her to the door. She refused sharply, saying she preferred to be alone. Before getting out of the car, she looked at me with a strange, appraising look and said, 'Theodore, you're a good friend to Ray. Whatever happens, remember that.'" Those words sounded like a warning. After Sophia left, Vanessa turned to Theodore. "What's going on between her and Mary? All evening they acted as if one of them had planted a bomb in the house, and the other had the remote control." Theodore shook his head. "I don't know for sure, but I have a bad feeling about this. Sophia is hiding something, and Mary seems to know what it is, and Ray is too in love to see the obvious." Soon, the last guests left the Ellison mansion, Sophia's parents and Olivia. Ray helped his mother see them out and returned to the library, where Mary was already waiting for him, sitting in an antique armchair with a glass of brandy. "The servants have left too," she said, looking at the fire in the fireplace. "We're alone, Ray. We need to have a serious talk." Ray sat down opposite her and filled his glass. "About what, Mom? What's so urgent that it can't wait until tomorrow? I promised Sophia I wouldn't be late." Mary looked at her son for a long time, as if gathering her thoughts. "About Sophia, about your fiancé. There's something you need to know before the wedding." Ray's face tensed. "What exactly? You've been acting strange all evening, and the last few weeks too. What's going on between you and Sophia?" Mary took a sip of brandy, as if gathering her courage. "It's complicated, son, and it's going to hurt. But I can't let you marry her without knowing the truth." "What truth?" Ray's voice sounded increasingly irritated. "About who Sophia Meyer really is, and what happened between us." At that moment, the clock in the Ellison mansion struck midnight. It was April 25th, the day that was supposed to be Ray and Sophia's wedding day, but instead changed their destinies forever. In her apartment, Sophia stood at the window, looking out at the lights of Boston at night. On the coffee table lay an open envelope and several photographs. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Ray. She didn't answer. Instead, she dialed another number. "It's me," she said quietly into the receiver. "She's going to tell him everything. Today. I saw the evidence in her office. No, I don't know how much she knows, but enough to ruin everything. Yes, I understand what's at stake. No, I can't let that happen. I'll take care of it myself." After hanging up, Sophia stared at the phone for a long time, then resolutely headed to the bedroom and began packing a small bag. Meanwhile, Theodore, concerned about the events of the evening, tried to call Ray, but his phone was turned off. After sending a message with the warning, "We need to talk about Sophia. Urgent. Call me as soon as you're free," he sat down in an armchair, realizing that he was unlikely to sleep that night. Night fell on Boston, hiding the secrets and conflicts that were unfolding behind closed doors. None of the participants in this drama suspected that the next day would bring not wedding bells, but police sirens. In the library of the Ellison mansion, an antique clock ticked away the minutes after midnight. Ray sat across from his mother, waiting for an explanation. Logs crackled in the fireplace, casting shadows on the walls decorated with family portraits. "I didn't want to do this," Mary began quietly, twirling a glass of brandy in her hands. "God knows I tried to find another way. But the wedding is tomorrow, and I can't let you make this mistake." "What mistake?" Ray asked impatiently. "Mom, if this is about Sophie not being from our circle again..." "It's not about her background," Mary said, setting the glass down sharply on the table. Her hands were trembling slightly. "Then what is it?" Mary took a deep breath, as if she were about to dive into icy water. "Ray, what I'm about to say is going to hurt, but you need to know." She paused. "I slept with your fiancée, Sophia. It was a mistake." The words hung in the air like shards of broken glass. Ray looked at his mother, not understanding, not wanting to understand. "What did you say?" His voice was barely audible. "It happened 6 months ago," Mary continued, not looking her son in the eye. "We were at an art fair in New York. We stayed in the same hotel room and drank too much wine. It only happened once. We both regretted it immediately." "You're lying," Ray whispered, then raised his voice. "You're lying. Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to destroy my happiness?" "I have proof." Mary stood up and walked over to an antique secretary desk in the corner of the room. According to testimony obtained later, about 8 hours passed between that moment and the discovery of the body. During that time, events occurred that became key to the investigation. Witness testimony and surveillance camera footage confirmed that at 1:15 a.m., Ray Ellison left his mother's mansion. Cameras recorded him leaving through the main entrance. An Uber driver confirmed that he picked up a man resembling Ray at around 1:20 a.m. and drove him to a residential complex in the Back Bay area where Ray and Sophia's apartment was located. He seemed upset, the driver said. He was silent the whole way, just looking out the window. I even asked if everything was okay, but he didn't answer. Neighbors in the complex heard loud talking in Ray and Sophia's apartment around 2 a.m. It wasn't a full-blown argument, said Mrs. Clark from the neighboring apartment. It was more of an emotional conversation. I heard a man's voice that seemed to be repeating, "Is it true? Is it true?" I could hardly hear the woman's voice. At 2:45 a.m., cameras recorded Ray leaving the building again and getting into a taxi. This moment was of particular interest to investigators, as the taxi driver confirmed that he drove the passenger back to the Beacon Hill area, dropping him off a few blocks from the Ellisons' mansion. He asked me to stop the car 2 blocks before the address he gave me, the driver testified. He said he wanted to walk. He seemed strangely focused. What happened at the Ellisons' mansion after midnight and until morning remains unknown. Outdoor surveillance cameras recorded another figure approaching the house from the garden side at around 3:30 a.m. Due to the darkness and a hood covering the face, it was not possible to identify the person. This figure was not recorded leaving through the same entrance. At 9:15 a.m., the Ellisons' housekeeper, Gloria Ramirez, arrived at the mansion to prepare breakfast. According to the schedule set by Mary, she was supposed to make coffee and bring it to the mistress's bedroom by 9:30. I knocked on Miss Allison's bedroom door, but no one answered, Gloria later recounted, still in a state of shock. This was unusual because Miss Allison always woke up early. I thought she might be in the bathroom, so I decided to leave the coffee tray on the bedside table. When Gloria opened the bedroom door, she found that the bed was untouched. No one had slept there that night. This surprised the housekeeper even more, and she began checking the other rooms for her mistress. I went through the entire second floor, then went down to the first floor. When I looked into the library, oh my God, I will never forget that sight. Mary Allison's body was found in the library, by the fireplace. According to the medical examiner's report, death was caused by multiple stab wounds to the chest and neck. The murder weapon was believed to be an antique letter opener that was on the table in the library. Signs of a struggle were found at the scene: an overturned table, a broken brandy glass, and several drops of blood on the carpet leading to the body. The scene indicates a crime committed in the heat of passion, the medical examiner stated in his preliminary report. The victim received at least 8 blows. The nature of the injuries indicates considerable force and emotional excitement on the part of the attacker. The alarm was raised at 9:35 a.m. when Gloria Ramirez, screaming and crying, ran out of the mansion and stopped a passing patrol car. Officers Johnson and Perez were the first to arrive at the scene and called for backup. By 10:15 a.m., the house was surrounded by police cars and the area was cordoned off with yellow tape. Neighbors and passers-by gathered nearby, drawn by the unusual activity in this quiet, upscale neighborhood. One of the first people detained was Ray Ellison. Police found him in the apartment he shared with Sophia. According to the officers, he appeared shocked when they informed him of his mother's death. He just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at one spot, Officer Perez recalled. He didn't cry or scream. He just kept repeating, "This can't be. This can't be." Sophia was not found in the apartment. Neighbors reported seeing her leave early in the morning with a small bag. Calls were made to her phone, but there was no answer. By noon, news of the tragedy had leaked to the press. Local news headlines screamed, "Murder in Beacon Hill Mansion. Tragedy on wedding day. Groom's mother found dead." Journalists quickly linked Mary Ellison to a well-known gallery and influential Boston family, which drew even more attention to the case. At 1:45 p.m., Detective Rachel Morris, who had been assigned to the investigation, arrived at the police station. With over 15 years of experience in the homicide department, Morris had a reputation as a methodical and astute investigator. When I first saw the case files, Detective Morris said in a subsequent interview. I had the feeling that this was not a typical robbery murder. There was too much emotion, too much personal involvement. In cases like this, the first thing you need to establish is the motive. And to do that, you need to understand what happened between the victim and her circle in the last days and hours. Morris's first step was to visit the crime scene. She spent more than 3 hours at the Ellisons' mansion, personally examining Mary's library and study, talking to forensic experts, and studying the layout of the rooms. Several details caught Morris's attention. An open desk in the library, from which, judging by the dust, something had recently been removed. The absence of Mary's wedding ring, although according to the housekeeper, she never took it off, and partially burned documents in the fireplace. The killer was looking for something specific, Morris concluded, or trying to destroy evidence, maybe both. The next step was to question Ray Ellison, who had already been taken to the police station. According to the officers, he was still in shock, but agreed to give a statement without a lawyer. Ray Ellison told us about a conversation he had with his mother the day before, Morris reported to her boss. According to him, Mary made a shocking confession about her relationship with his fiancée, Sophia Meyer. He claims he was shocked, didn't believe his mother, and left the house around 1 a.m. to go home and confront Sophia. Ray confirmed that he returned to his mother's mansion later that night, but insisted that he found Mary alive. I wanted to apologize for my reaction, he said. We talked for about another hour. She was upset, but alive and well when I left around 4 a.m. Ray's alibi for the period between 4 and 9 a.m. was not confirmed. He claimed that he returned to his apartment and fell asleep, while Sophia, according to him, was absent. The turning point in the investigation was the discovery of suspicious materials in Sophia's apartment. During a search, police found an envelope hidden in the bathroom ventilation shaft, containing intimate photographs of Mary Ellison and Sophia Meyer, as well as a draft letter that could be interpreted as an attempt at blackmail. The materials indicate that the relationship between Mary Ellison and Sophia Meyer did indeed go beyond the professional and familial, Detective Morris said at a briefing. We have reason to believe that these materials could have been used for blackmail. By evening, Sophia Meyer was still unavailable. Her phone was turned off, and her parents, who were staying at a hotel, reported that they had not seen their daughter since the previous evening and were concerned about her disappearance. At around 7 p.m., Detective Morris received a message from the officer guarding the crime scene. Another item potentially related to the case had been found in the Ellison mansion, a woman's earring found under one of the chairs in the library. Preliminary identification indicated that the earring belonged to Sophia Meyer. We are expanding the search for Miss Meyer, Morris announced to reporters gathered at the police station. She is currently considered a person of interest in the investigation. We have reason to believe that she may have key information about the events that took place at the Ellisons' mansion last night. At that moment, Theodore Frost arrived at the station with important information about Sophia's behavior at the pre-wedding dinner and her suspicious actions in Mary's office. The circle of suspects was narrowing, and the city of Boston was watching with bated breath as events unfolded in what had already been dubbed the wedding that turned into a nightmare. For the next 48 hours, Detective Morris worked almost without rest. She turned the police station conference room into an investigation headquarters, where the walls were covered with photographs, timelines, and relationship diagrams. I always believe that the answers lie in the details and connections, Morris told her team. This isn't just a crime of passion. There are elements of planning, greed, and manipulation here. Sophia Meyer was found on the morning of the second day in a motel on the outskirts of Boston, where she had checked in under a false name. She did not resist arrest and appeared exhausted and depressed. A plane ticket to Mexico and about $5,000 in cash were found in her possession. During her first interrogation, Sophia denied any involvement in Mary's murder. Yes, we had a relationship, she admitted, nervously twisting the sleeve of her sweater. It happened once, 6 months ago. We both regretted it and agreed never to mention it. I loved Ray and wanted to marry him. I would never have hurt his mother. When she was shown the photos and the draft letter, Sophia turned pale. I didn't take those photos. It was Jason's idea. Jason Lang, a name that had not previously appeared in the case, turned out to be Sophia's younger brother, a troubled young man with a criminal past and financial difficulties. It was him that Theodore saw with Sophia in the cafe, and it was him she was talking to on the phone after the pre-wedding dinner. Jason found out about my relationship with Mary by accident, Sophia said, no longer trying to hide her tears. He saw our messages on my phone, and he came up with a plan to use it to get money. He threatened to tell Ray if I didn't help him. Further investigation confirmed that Jason Lang had indeed been in Boston in recent weeks and had met with his sister several times. Analysis of phone records showed intense messaging between them, especially on the eve of the wedding. At the same time, forensic examination of the Ellisons' mansion yielded new results. Fingerprints that did not belong to Ray, Sophia, or Mary were found on the letter opener, the presumed murder weapon. DNA analysis of bloodstains on the carpet revealed the presence of blood not only from the victim, but also from the killer, who apparently cut himself during the attack. Theodore Frost became a key witness, providing Detective Morris with a detailed account of Sophia's suspicious behavior in the weeks leading up to the wedding. She constantly lied about her whereabouts, met with an unknown man who now turned out to be her brother, and broke into Mary's office during the pre-wedding dinner, he confirmed. I should have insisted that Ray postpone the wedding until everything was cleared up. I let my friend down. A new twist in the case came when Olivia Chen, a wedding planner and friend of Sophia's, contacted the police. She provided a recording of a conversation accidentally recorded on her phone during one of the wedding planning meetings. In the recording, you can hear Jason Lang telling Sophia, "The old woman will pay to save her reputation, and if she doesn't, your precious Ray will find out everything." Sophia begs him to stop, saying she loves Ray and doesn't want to lose him, Olivia explained. Further analysis of Mary Allison's finances revealed a large withdrawal of $100,000 in cash a week before the murder. The money was not found in the mansion or in the gallery's safe. On the 4th day of the investigation, Detective Morris received the results of DNA analysis from the crime scene. A blood sample that did not belong to Mary matched the DNA taken from Jason Lang, who was already under police surveillance at the time. Jason was arrested at Boston Airport while attempting to fly to Canada. A large amount of cash was found on him, which was later confirmed to match the amount withdrawn by Mary Allison. During questioning, Jason initially denied any involvement, but when confronted with DNA evidence and witness testimony, he eventually confessed. "It was supposed to be just blackmail," he said, avoiding Detective Morris's gaze. "I took the photos when they were in New York. Sophia didn't know about it. I threatened Mary that I would tell Ray everything if she didn't pay. She agreed to meet me the night before the wedding." Jason confessed that he had broken into the Ellison mansion after Ray had left. He planned to get the money and disappear, but Mary changed the terms of the deal. "She said she had already told Ray everything," Jason continued, his voice trembling. "That blackmail no longer made sense. She called me a pathetic loser and said that people like me should know their place. I didn't plan to kill her. I just lost it." A reconstruction of the events of that night, based on Jason's confession and forensic evidence, showed that he entered the mansion through a basement window at around 3:30 a.m., met Mary in the library, and, after an argument, grabbed a letter opener and stabbed her multiple times. After the murder, he took the money and fled through the same entrance, then contacted Sophia, telling her that things didn't go according to plan and that she should run. Jason Lang's trial took place 6 months later and attracted enormous media attention. He was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sophia Meyer was found guilty of aiding and abetting extortion and sentenced to 5 years probation. In her closing statement to the court, she addressed Ray. I really loved you. What happened between me and your mother was a mistake. I never wanted to hurt you. Forgive me, even though I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Ray Ellison did not attend the trial. According to Theodore, he sold his apartment in Boston and his mother's gallery, then left town without telling anyone his new whereabouts. This tragedy completely destroyed him, Theodore said in an interview a year later. He lost his mother, the woman he loved, and his faith in people. The last I heard, he was traveling around Europe, trying to start his life over. Olivia Chen moved to Los Angeles and continued her career as a wedding planner. Every time I plan a wedding, I remember the one that never happened, she admitted. It reminds me that dark secrets can lurk behind the flawless facades of relationships. Sophia's parents returned to Chicago and severed all ties with their daughter. We raised her with a sense of morality and honesty, David Meyer said in a brief comment to the press. We don't recognize the woman she has become. Theodore Frost stayed in Boston and founded an IT security consulting company. He kept in touch with Ray through occasional emails. I always felt that I could have prevented this tragedy if I had been more persistent, he said. This guilt will haunt me for the rest of my life. Detective Rachel Morris was promoted after successfully solving the case. In her speech at a criminology conference, she noted, "The Allison case reminds us that the most dangerous crimes often arise from tangled personal relationships. Secrets, lies, and manipulation can be as deadly as any weapon." The Allisons' mansion was sold to an anonymous buyer and completely renovated. The new owners did not know, or chose not to know, about the tragedy that had occurred within its walls. The Allison Art Gallery was acquired by a large chain and renamed. Mary Allison's collection was sold at auction, and the proceeds, at Ray's request, were donated to charity. This crime, which began with a secret affair and ended in ruined lives, served as a reminder of how dangerous the intertwining of passion, greed, and deception can be. In a town where everyone knew the story of the wedding that turned into tragedy, it became a dark, urban legend, a warning about the price that sometimes has to be paid for secrets.